I guess in general terms, how would you describe whether it was a mandate to go out and spend and make the moves necessary to get the Cubs back, or the flexibility that Jed Hoyer was afforded or allowed going to San Diego for the winter meetings? How would you describe what the goal was this week from an organizational perspective?
Yeah, the goal. So there wasn't a mandate. The one beautiful thing about our ownership group is they don't issue a lot of mandates. They urge and encourage us to think broadly, whether it's about saving the stadium or building a better spring training home or improving what we're doing in the Dominican or doing what we can with our media network to serve our fans better. But they're not real big on mandates to do things. They leave that in our hands, mine on the business side and Jed's on the baseball side. There was a lot of flexibility in the budget, just based on how things fell. The business is still healthy, and that left Jed with a lot of money to spend this year. Like last year, where he didn't spend all the money he had last year, just didn't see transactions that made sense to him. And I hope there are transactions that make sense to us this year to spend all the money he has. He gotten off to a good start. The goal is always the same. It's to win another championship. So if a player can help us get closer to that goal, I think you're going to see him be very aggressive. Again, looking at the timeline for that, you saw a lot of spending by playoff teams from last year, a couple that were not in the playoffs that spent, but largely you're looking at teams that were real close last year trying to finish off a final product and put what they believe the final piece of the puzzle together in the free agent market. We were not a playoff team last year, so our sort of arc is a little different, but certainly no reason to think we wouldn't be a playoff team this year.
So for fans wondering, just because the winter meetings have ended, the Cubs offseason has not. There could still be a few more moves left for the baseball people to get done here.
Yeah, it's funny if you look at it over time. For me, this is whatever the 22nd winter meeting that I've been a part of. It used to be you saw a lot of activity at the GM meetings and the winter meetings, and you kind of went into the holidays with a lot of transactions behind you and your roster not set, but significantly changed, and that's all changed. It's funny that. It used to be that, the winter meetings were full of meetings, where, and the GM meetings where the GMs were all huddled together. And now the GMs are calling each other from the same location, which, the advent of the internet and sort of technology has allowed the winter meetings to start kind of, 10 days after the World Series and end, sometime in January. So, yeah, the vast majority of free agents are still out there. The big names have come off the board, but there's a ton of talent still to be added, and then the trade market really opens up in earnest after the big free agents are gone. So I think we may be in the third inning of our offseason in terms of how the roster will look, come February.
Long way to go, and I know this maybe oversimplifies it, Crane, but you understand how this all works. Fans look at the Mets spending the way that Steve Cohen has spent. They look at the Padres in that market investing $280 million in Xander Bogaerts. And they think that, okay, you're the Chicago Cubs. You have the Marquee Sports Network. You have Wrigley Field. You are the Chicago Cubs in the Chicago. Why would you ever allow yourself to be outbid for Carlos Correa? If he is still out there, then money should be no object, and Jed Hoyer should pursue him with all the gusto that it takes to get the big fish, because he is this year's big fish. Is that understandable from your point of view?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Remember, we all live and breathe the same atmosphere that our fans are in. And, we're all dying to see a great team play in front of our fans and for our fans. And, you can say what you like about, well, this is going to be a tough season or a reset. And it's easy to say in February, but when you're grinding your way through 6 months of it in the summer, it's no fun. We are looking to have a lot more fun this coming year. I love the Hot Stove League. I love what you guys do on the radio. I love the fact that we're talking about baseball as the snow falls. And I love the fact our fans are anxious about getting back to playoff baseball, because you and I know, I mean, when I first started here in '03, making the playoffs that year after beating the Pirates in a doubleheader felt like an act of God. I mean, it was always a decade between playoff appearances, and it felt like it would never happen. And then you rarely got out of the first round. And now we've been treated to, 6 years in a row of either making the playoffs or just missing, and obviously getting to the NLCS 3 times and winning it all at once. And, it's not decades in between. It's been a couple of years now since we won the division in 2020. And it feels like forever, even though it's only been 2 years since we won the division. And that's a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing that we all feel impatient after a 2-year drought when we used to have 10-year droughts. It just means we're making progress. And so, no, I get how the fans feel, and I share their feeling. We're all anxious to get back to playing in October.
So Commissioner Manfred this week said that the Cubs are among the teams that have expressed a desire to host upcoming All-Star games. What can you share with us from an organizational standpoint as to what you guys would like to do?
Yeah, so we've been in front of. So it's really Rob's call too, and he made it clear a few years ago that the All-Star game is such a jewel for the city in which it's played. If you host the All-Star game, I think the last major market, LA did it just recently, but I know when New York hosted it last, I think they said it was worth $200 and some million to the local economy through the hotel rooms and restaurants and air flights and all the shopping that gets done, because the All-Star game, as you know, is really a week in length. So it's such this amazing gift to the local market that gets it. The commissioner basically said, you need to compete for it a little bit. So our first pitch really in earnest, where we put the entire program of what we could offer in the city, was in 2017. Rahm Emanuel flew to New York with a team and made the pitch with our help. And the stadium was under construction. So we said, listen, you have to get way ahead of this. So we were aiming for the 2020 game, which is when we thought Wrigley Field would be finished. And then more recently, we had the commissioner here for the rededication of Wrigley Field. And we had Mayor Lightfoot's team come out and make another pitch. So he knows how eager we are to see it come here. The realities are, as he measures which cities should be receiving the game, he looks at where cities have really supported the club. So it's going to Texas in 2024. They just financed a new stadium for the Rangers. Oddly, after their old stadium, which was 17 years old, was deemed obsolete. It's going to Seattle in 23. We know it's going to Philly in 26 to celebrate the country's anniversary. So that means 25 is open, probably the next chance we would have. And we're, more than deserving. Haven't had it since 1990. There are some security issues that the commissioner's team has pointed out around Wrigley Field. As you know, we play in a very urban area with active streets around the ballpark that Lori and her team, the Mayor Lightfoot and her team, have made a case to the commissioner they will resolve in our favor to make it look better to the commissioner from a safety perspective. So we're actively working with the mayor's office, doggedly trying to get the commissioner to grant us the game and hopeful for 25.
Talking with Crane Kenney, the Cubs business operations president, here on The Score. Crane, so back to the free agent market for a moment. I just wondered the level of surprise that you felt watching the market explode this week with the size of the contracts, and whether or not you feel like it's realistic. So if Carlos Correa, who is the biggest name out there still, if it requires a commitment financially of more than $300 million in a contract that would last nearly a decade, is that beyond the Cubs' means? Is that too rich for the Cubs' blood, or would the Cubs be willing to be in that kind of conversation for a contract that size?
Well, I'm not going to help Scott bore us out with too many words about where we'd go or where we wouldn't go. But, we're a fortunate club, and I've said this, and people don't always love hearing it, but, our owners have been incredibly straightforward from the day they bought the club, which was We're not taking a nickel out of this thing. Everything you earn, Crane, you can dedicate to the baseball operations and to the stadium renovation and other things that you think and Jed thinks are necessary to help us win games. So we have an ownership team that says, listen, if you made $1, you can spend it. And that means that the success of the organization on the business side leads directly to the resources Jed has to spend on players. And as I said earlier, he has a pretty healthy amount of money to spend still. So I think some of the, you see it's a cycle here if you've been around long enough to right after a CBA gets signed in the first year of labor peace, that owners and team executives get pretty aggressive in that first free agent market, knowing you've got 4 or 5 years left on a CBA where you won't have to worry about work stoppage. And I think we're seeing that here. I don't know who will, quote unquote, win the offseason. I think last year the Rangers were considered the winners when they signed Simeon and Seager. I don't know who will be deemed the winner of this free agent class. Resources are available. Jed will spread them as he sees fit. And we're going to play better baseball next year.
So, David, I think, and Crane, I'm taking the liberty here, but I think what Crane is saying is no, if that's what Jed feels is best for the team, then they'll do it.
Yeah, it's been that way. Fortunately, when Theo was here and now with Jed leading the team, Tom takes a step back, which I think is appropriate, at least the way we view baseball operations. We provide the budget toward the end of the fall. We say, here's the surplus that's available to sign players. And then Jed and his team do all the work, whether we're going to strengthen our pitching, hitting, and what we're going to do in the trade market. You have a game plan, but it's like anything, right? You have a game plan, then you get into the marketplace, and it doesn't always go the way you think it will. But flexibility's there, and let's, I think we got to let this thing play out. And I would say by the time we get a little past the Cubs convention, we'll know a lot more about what our club's going to look like.